These are two Hollywood legends who represented completely opposite visions of America. Yet their unexpected encounter on a closed movie set in 1973 changed everything. This is what happened when Clint Eastwood walked uninvited onto John Wayne's set, and why Wayne's reaction surprised everyone in Hollywood. August 1973, Warner Brothers Studios, Soundstage 16. John Wayne was shooting his latest Western, Cahill U.S. Marshal. It was a closed set, no visitors, no press, no exceptions. The Duke ran his productions like a military operation. At 66 years old, after 4 decades of making movies, Wayne had earned the right to do things his way. When he said no visitors, security guards enforced it without question. The crew understood. Everyone in Hollywood understood. Then, Clint Eastwood walked through the door. No announcement, no invitation, no permission. Just Clint, 43 years old, fresh off High Plains Drifter, the biggest Western star of the new generation, strolling onto Wayne's set like he owned the place. The security guard scrambled to intercept him. "Sir, this is a closed set. Mr. Wayne doesn't allow—" Clint kept walking without breaking stride. Cameras stopped rolling. 70 crew members froze, watching what was about to unfold. Because everyone knew John Wayne hated Clint Eastwood. Wayne had said it publicly, repeatedly. He'd called Clint's spaghetti westerns un-American. He'd declared that the man with no name was a villain masquerading as a hero. He'd argued that Clint was systematically destroying everything the Western genre represented. Now here was Clint, walking across that soundstage, heading straight for the Duke. Wayne turned around, saw who it was, and his face hardened. What happened in the next 5 minutes became the most legendary confrontation in Hollywood Western history. To understand the magnitude of this moment, you need to grasp what these two men represented in 1973. They weren't just competing actors. They embodied two fundamentally different visions of America itself. John Wayne was the old guard incarnate, the Duke, the symbol of American masculinity for an entire generation. He'd been crafting westerns since the 1930s. Stagecoach, Red River, The Searchers, True Grit. His cowboys were noble, honorable men who fought for justice and protected the innocent. Wayne's westerns were moral certainties wrapped in American flags. Good guys wore white hats. Bad guys got their comeuppance. America was righteous, and American heroes reflected that righteousness. Then, Clint Eastwood rode into town and shattered the mythology. The man with no name wasn't noble. He was mercenary. He killed for money, played all sides against each other, and walked away from destroyed towns without a backward glance. Clint's anti-hero didn't represent American righteousness. He embodied American violence, the dark underbelly of frontier expansion that Wayne's films had always sanitized or ignored. Wayne's hatred wasn't just professional jealousy, it was philosophical warfare. In a brutal 1971 Playboy interview, Wayne unleashed his full fury on Clint's filmography. He called the spaghetti westerns un-American and accused them of glorifying violence without moral consequence. The quote that made headlines nationwide: "I don't like what Eastwood is doing to the western. He's making pictures where the weights are wrong, where the killers are the heroes, and the heroes are nowhere to be found. That's not America. That's not what we fought for." Wayne even wrote Clint a personal letter, asking him to reconsider the types of westerns he was making. He pleaded with Clint to think about what his films were doing to the genre, to America itself, to the values Wayne had spent his entire career defending. Clint never responded. Not because he was intimidated, not because he agreed, but because Clint Eastwood simply didn't engage in public feuds. He didn't write angry letters or defend himself in press conferences. He just kept making movies, his movies, exactly the way he wanted to make them, which made his appearance on Wayne's closed set even more shocking. Wayne stood up from his director's chair, all 6'4" of him. Even at 66, even after the lung cancer surgery that had taken part of his lung in 1964, he remained an imposing physical presence. Clint matched him in height but not in bearing, lean where Wayne was broad, still where Wayne was commanding. Two giants facing off across a soundstage while 70 crew members watched like spectators at a gunfight. Wayne spoke first, his famous voice low and dangerous. "This is a closed set, Eastwood." Clint stopped 10 feet away, close enough for conversation, far enough for maneuvering. "I know, that's why I came." Wayne's eyes narrowed. "You got something to say to me?" "I got something to give you." Clint reached inside his jacket. The crew visibly tensed. Several people actually stepped backward, as if expecting him to draw a gun like one of his movie characters. Instead, Clint produced a bottle of top-shelf tequila, the expensive kind Wayne was known to appreciate. "I read your letter," Clint said, holding out the bottle. "The one you sent me 2 years ago. I didn't respond because I didn't know what to say. But I've been thinking about it, and I wanted to tell you something in person." Wayne didn't take the bottle, just stared at Clint, waiting. "You're right," Clint continued. "We make different kinds of westerns. You make yours, I make mine, and we're probably never going to agree on which approach is better. But here's what I came to say. I wouldn't be making any westerns at all if it weren't for you." Clint paused, ensuring Wayne was truly listening. "I grew up watching your movies. Stagecoach, Red River, The Searchers. You're the reason I wanted to get into this business in the first place. You're the reason I wanted to make westerns. Everything I do, even the stuff you hate, it comes from what you built. So I came here to say thank you." He held out the bottle again. "And to give you this." The soundstage fell completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. John Wayne looked at the bottle, looked at Clint, looked at the bottle again. Then the Duke did something absolutely nobody expected. He laughed. Not a polite chuckle or a nervous giggle, but a full, deep, genuine belly laugh. The kind Wayne was famous for in his lighter roles. The kind that said he was genuinely amused, genuinely surprised, and genuinely disarmed. He reached out and took the bottle from Clint's outstretched hand. "You got some balls, Eastwood," Wayne said, his voice now carrying admiration instead of hostility. "Walking onto my set like this. Anyone else, I'd have thrown them out on their ass." "I know," Clint replied. "That's why I did it in person. Figured you'd respect the direct approach." Wayne studied Clint for a long moment. The anger had completely drained from his face, replaced by something that might have been curiosity or respect. "You really grew up watching my pictures?" "Every one I could get into. Oakland didn't have many movie theaters, but the ones we had played your films constantly. I must have seen Stagecoach a dozen times." Wayne grunted approvingly. "That's a good picture. Maybe Ford's best." "It's why I wanted to make westerns," Clint said. "The whole mythology, the landscape, the code, the idea of a man alone against the wilderness. That all came from watching you." Wayne was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that surprised everyone within earshot. "I've seen your pictures too, you know." Clint raised an eyebrow. "And I don't like them," Wayne continued, his voice blunt but no longer hostile. "They're too dark, too violent. The hero isn't heroic enough for my taste." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "But I can see you know what you're doing. You're not making bad pictures. You're making different pictures. And maybe that's not the same thing." Coming from John Wayne, that was practically a glowing review. "That's all I needed to hear," Clint nodded. Wayne looked at the bottle of tequila in his hand, then back at Clint. "You drink tequila?" "When the occasion calls for it." Wayne turned to his assistant. "Get 2 glasses." Then he addressed the crew. "Take 15, everybody. Mr. Eastwood and I are going to have a conversation." Within minutes, the soundstage was empty except for 2 Western legends, 2 chairs, and an expensive bottle of tequila. Nobody knows exactly what John Wayne and Clint Eastwood discussed during that hour-long private conversation. The set remained cleared, no witnesses, no recordings, just 2 icons alone with their shared history and fundamental disagreements about the genre they both loved. But people noticed changes afterward. Both men were laughing when the crew returned, not politely but genuinely, like old friends rediscovering common ground. Wayne personally escorted Clint to the door, shook his hand, and said something too quiet for anyone else to hear. Clint turned back at the threshold, nodded once, and replied, "I'll remember that, Duke." Wayne remained in the best mood anyone had seen in months. The remainder of the shoot proceeded smoothly, with Wayne showing unusual patience with the crew and generosity with his fellow actors. Years later, people close to both men pieced together fragments of their conversation. They had argued, passionately but respectfully, about the Western as a genre and what it meant to America. Wayne defended the traditional approach. Heroes who embodied American values, stories that affirmed civilization's triumph over savagery. He believed Westerns should inspire audiences, showing them their best possible selves. Clint advocated for something darker and more complex. He argued that Westerns should tell uncomfortable truths, even when those truths were ugly. The real West had been violent and morally complicated, populated by men who were neither heroes nor villains, but something murkier. He believed Westerns should challenge audiences, confronting them with the world as it actually existed. Neither man convinced the other, they never would. But somewhere in that conversation, they discovered mutual respect. Wayne reportedly said, "You're not trying to destroy the Western, you're trying to evolve it. I don't like your version, but I understand why you're making it." Clint reportedly replied, "Your version will always matter. It's the foundation. Without you, there's nothing for me to build on or tear down." That last comment made Wayne laugh. "Tear down? You got some nerve, kid." But he was smiling when he said it. From that day forward, John Wayne never publicly criticized Clint Eastwood again. Not once. For the remaining 6 years of his life, interviewers constantly pressed Wayne about Clint, hoping to reignite the feud. Wayne refused to take the bait. When asked about Clint's Westerns, he'd simply say, "We make different pictures, that's all." When pushed about whether he still considered Clint's films un-American, Wayne would respond, "I said what I said, but a man can change his perspective on things." The closest Wayne came to explaining his change of heart was in a 1976 interview. When asked about burying the hatchet with Clint, Wayne smiled that crooked, weathered grin that had launched 1,000 movies. "He came to see me on his own, uninvited, walked right onto my set like he owned the place. You know what? That took guts. I respect guts. Always have." The reporter pressed, "So you're friends now?" Wayne shook his head. "I wouldn't say friends. We're too different for that. But there's respect. And in this business, respect is worth more than friendship. Friendship fades. Respect lasts." John Wayne died on June 11, 1979, from stomach cancer. He was 72 years old. Clint Eastwood attended the memorial service, sitting quietly in the back, avoiding the press, making no statements. But observers noted that he remained until the very end, long after the celebrities had departed and the cameras had stopped rolling. He just sat there, alone, paying final respects to the man who had inspired him, fought with him, and ultimately respected him. 13 years after Wayne's death in 1992, Clint released Unforgiven, one of the darkest Westerns ever made. It was everything Wayne had criticized about Clint's films: morally ambiguous, violent, featuring protagonists who were more anti-hero than hero. Yet the film served as an unexpected tribute to Wayne's legacy. Unforgiven acknowledged the Wayne mythology, the idea of the heroic gunfighter, then explored what happened when that myth aged, when violence caught up with the legend, when heroes had to face uncomfortable truths about themselves. The film only worked because audiences remembered what Westerns used to represent, what heroes used to mean. In its own dark way, Unforgiven completed a conversation that began on a Warner Brothers soundstage in 1973. It showed that disagreement doesn't have to mean disrespect, that you can fundamentally oppose someone's worldview while still honoring their contributions and learning from their example. Clint Eastwood walked onto John Wayne's set uninvited that August day. What happened next wasn't just surprising, it was transformative. Two supposed enemies discovered they could become something like allies. Two opposing visions of America found unexpected common ground. And the Western genre, that great American mythology, emerged richer for containing both perspectives. The lesson transcends Hollywood feuds or movie genres. It's about having the courage to show up face to face and acknowledge both your disagreements and your debts. It's about recognizing that respect and opposition can coexist, that you can think someone is fundamentally wrong while still honoring what they've built. Most importantly, it's about understanding that some conversations can only happen in person, with honesty, humility, and maybe a bottle of good tequila.